The story of the feeding of the 5,000 is the only miracle story that's actually found in all four Gospels. So it was clearly important to the early church, which is probably not all that surprising since it's the story of a small gift multiplied into great abundance. And in a hungry world, who doesn't want abundance? Now, today, many of us don't know quite what to make with stories like this. We end up getting stuck on the how question. How did this happen? But I think the more important question to ask ourselves is why? Why, when God gives to us so abundantly and generously, do we find it so hard to trust in that abundance and practice generosity ourselves? Because abundance and generosity are not issues just for the distant past. The pastor of First Presbyterian Church in New Vernon in New Jersey tells of the time some years ago now when they were given an unexpected gift from an anonymous donor. It was one of the largest single donations they'd ever received, and there were no strings on it. They could use it any way they saw fit. But instead of doing what most of us probably would do and save it for future needs, they did something completely different. They decided to give it away to people who didn't need it. They converted the gift into cash, distributed it into hundreds of small envelopes, and then distributed the envelopes to every man, woman, and child who came to church on Palm Sunday and Easter Sunday that year. The note that accompanied each envelope was simple. This is a gift for you. If you need this gift, it's yours. If you know someone who needs it more, it's yours to give. Or you can multiply the gift by investing it with your time, talent, and energy, and we will harvest those multiplied gifts on the first Sunday in October. The response was immediate. Vegetable gardens were planted, bird houses built, flower gardens were set, seedlings were sold, rag dolls were sewn, families pooled their gifts and held dinners, small stocks were purchased, babysitting services were started, and week by week, those small gifts grew until on the first Sunday in October, they harvested an embarrassment of riches. That one gift had been multiplied 5-fold. And they had enough money to build the first ever library at a small school in rural Kenya. 2 of the African students who pored over those books, the first books they had ever held, went off to university and returned to Kenya as teachers. And so the gift continues to grow on and on into the future. This is one picture of abundance, a gift multiplied and transformed into an open future that none of them could have envisioned at the start. And that's important because we can't always recognize where abundance will come from. When Jesus tells the disciples to feed the crowd, Philip's response is, "We can't afford it. We don't have enough." And that's what we usually say when faced with the enormity of the world's needs too. Just as it was in Jesus' day, our world is full of hungry people. People who are hungry for community, hungry for love, hungry for justice, hungry for God, and far too many, quite frankly, who are literally hungry for food. And faced with that, our response tends to be that of the disciples when Jesus says to them, "Feed them." How could we ever feed all of them? The disciples see only the problem and the hopelessness of the situation. We can't afford it. We don't have enough resources. The problem is too big. All we have are these 5 measly little loaves and these 2 crummy little fish. But Jesus took that little boy's gift, small and inadequate as it was, and made it enough. Enough not only just to give them all something to eat, but abundance that gave them everything they needed. Overwhelming abundance. John's version of this miracle is the only one that mentions the little boy as the giver of the 5 loaves and the 2 fish. A huge abundance is needed, and the disciples see only the shortfall. But a little boy, like the widow with her mite, offers all he has. A meager offering of small, cheap loaves and a couple of probably dried fish. But when it's given to Jesus, it's more than enough. This story shows us that what's small and insignificant can, when offered to God, be multiplied to provide enough. Our world is full of hungry people. And Jesus turns to us and says, "Feed my people." And quite frankly, our usual response is, we can't afford it. We don't have the resources. It isn't in the budget. The problem is too big. Let's form a committee and look at the options. All we have is these 5 crummy little loaves and these 2 measly little fish. But we are the body of Christ in the world, and Jesus calls us to look past the fears of how we are going to do ministry and just do it. William Esom, in his book, Sacred Cows Make Gourmet Burgers, asks in various ways throughout the book, what gifts do you bring to the body of Christ that, if we equip you to use them, the body of Christ will be more whole, and so will you? What gifts do you bring to the body of Christ that, if we equip you to use them, will make both you and the body of Christ more whole? I think that's a question we all need to ask ourselves without false humility. What gifts do I have, me, that if I use them will make both myself and the church a better place? And once we've identified what we have, then of course we need to offer that gift. We need to learn to live generously. There's a story I heard about a man named Paul, who was given a special pre-Christmas gift from his brother, a beautiful new car. On Christmas Eve, when Paul came out of his office, a street kid was walking around the shiny new car, admiring it. "Is this your car, mister?" the kid asked. When Paul replied that yes, it was, and that his brother had given it to him for Christmas, the boy said, "You mean your brother gave it to you and it didn't cost you anything? Free? For nothing? Gosh, I wish." The boy hesitated, and Paul knew what he was going to say. He'd heard it many times over the past few days. He was going to wish that he had a brother like that. But what the boy said next shocked Paul. "I wish," said the boy, "I wish I could be a brother like that." Well, we can be a brother or sister like that. We may not all have the ability to give away a car, but generosity is within all of us. The ability to make a difference for others is ours. All it takes is that we offer what we do have to God. All it takes is that we cease to worry about how little we have and begin instead to think about what we can offer. Because God working in us can do infinitely more than we can ask or imagine. Now, of course, individually, we can't end world hunger. Individually, we can't offer community to all the lonely, or love to all the loveless, or a way to God for those who need faith. But we can take what gifts we have and put them together and multiply them. Like the people in First Presbyterian Church in New Vernon, we can take our gifts and multiply them into an embarrassment of riches that will allow us to reach out to a hungry world. We just have to be willing to put our trust in God and give what we have, whether we feel like we have enough or not.